Nigeria and the United States have opened a fresh chapter in talks aimed at addressing Washington's designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, or CPC, over concerns surrounding religious freedom and violence. The development follows a new meeting of the US-Nigeria Joint Working Group in Washington, where officials from both countries reviewed Nigeria's progress and discussed what more needs to be done. The meeting was hosted by U.S. Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Alison Hoka, while Nigeria's delegation was led by National Security Advisor Noah Ribadu. And the message coming out of the Washington is clear. The United States says Nigeria has taken steps forward, but more action is still required. The latest discussions focus heavily on the protection of Christian communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt, accountability for perpetrators of violence, and deeper security cooperation between Washington and Abuja. This makes the meeting particularly important because the CPC designation has become a sensitive issue in Nigeria's relationship with the United States. For Abuja, the challenge is not simply diplomatic. Nigeria must demonstrate that its institutions are capable of protecting citizens, addressing violent attacks, and holding those responsible accountable regardless of their identity. According to the U.S. Department of State, officials from both countries reviewed progress in several areas. One of the major issues was the protection of Christian communities, particularly in parts of the Middle Belt affected by recurring violence. The two sides also examined efforts to return internally displaced persons to their ancestral communities. For thousands of Nigerians who have been forced from their homes by insecurity, that issue goes beyond diplomacy. It is about whether families who flee violence can eventually return home safely and rebuild their lives. The discussions also cover prosecutions linked to terrorism. Washington acknowledged Nigeria's efforts to prosecute hundreds of Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa suspects. The United States also took note of Nigeria's expansion of judicial capacity and the recruitment and training of 50,000 additional police officers. These measures, according to Washington, demonstrate that Nigeria has been taking steps to strengthen its security and justice institutions. But the U.S. government also highlights continuing concerns. American officials pointed to reports of civilian fatalities and raised concerns about transparency surrounding humanitarian expenditure. That means Washington is not simply looking at how many arrests are made or how many security personnel are recruited. It is also examining whether civilians are being protected and whether resources intended to assist vulnerable populations are being properly accounted for. This is where the CPC issue becomes particularly important. The designation is connected to concerns over religious freedom and the protection of religious communities. The United States has been particularly focused on violence affecting Christian communities, especially in Nigeria's Middle Belt. But Nigeria's security crisis is complex. The country faces terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, communal violence, and other forms of insecurity across different regions. The challenge for the Nigerian government is therefore to demonstrate that it can protect citizens while ensuring that perpetrators of violence are investigated and prosecuted. The latest talks suggest that Washington and Abuja are choosing engagement rather than confrontation. Instead of simply exchanging accusations, the two governments are now working through a formal joint working group to identify areas where progress can be measured. The meeting also focused on counter-terrorism financing, This is another critical area because terrorist organizations require financial networks to purchase weapons, recruit fighters, and sustain their operations. The US and Nigeria discussed cooperation aimed at disrupting those financial channels. They also examined biometric information sharing arrangements designed to strengthen accountability and law enforcement capabilities. Washington said additional capacity building assistance will be provided through its Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs and Bureau of Counterterrorism. That could give Nigerian security and justice institutions access to additional training, expertise, and cooperation. Military-to-military cooperation was another major component of the engagement. The United States and Nigeria continue discussions at the Pentagon as both countries look to deepen their security partnership. For Nigeria, stronger military cooperation with Washington could potentially provide additional support in areas such as counter-terrorism, intelligence sharing, and security capacity. For the United States, Nigeria remains strategically important because of its size, population, and position in West Africa. The two countries therefore have strong reasons to maintain cooperation even while disagreements remain. Separately, U.S. Under Secretary Alison Hooker met with NSA Noah Ribadu to discuss bilateral priorities. According to the U.S. side, the meeting reaffirmed Washington's commitment to working with Nigeria to protect Christian communities and strengthen joint security cooperation. The significance of this should not be underestimated. The United States is effectively saying that Nigeria's progress will be judged not simply by promises, but by concrete results. That means successful prosecutions, better protection for vulnerable communities, improved accountability, and stronger security institutions. It also means addressing the plight of internally displaced Nigerians. The U.S. State Department said both sides acknowledge that more work remains, particularly in supporting IDPs. This could become one of the most important indicators of progress. A government can announce military operations and security initiatives, but the ultimate measure of security is whether civilians can return to their homes and live without fear. The CPC designation has therefore placed additional international attention on Nigeria's security and religious freedom record. For the Nigerian government, resolving the concerns behind the designation could strengthen relations with Washington and demonstrate progress in protecting citizens. But the process will likely require sustained action. Nigeria cannot simply point to one operation, one prosecution, or one policy announcement. The government will need to demonstrate consistent results. Communities must feel safer. Victims must see perpetrators brought before the courts. Internally displaced people must be supported. And security and judicial institutions must become stronger and more accountable. The latest US-Nigeria meeting shows that both sides recognize the importance of continuing the conversation. Washington has acknowledged progress. At the same time, it has made clear that serious challenges remain. For Nigeria, that creates both pressure and an opportunity. Pressure, because the government must demonstrate that it can address the concerns raised by the United States. And an opportunity, because deeper cooperation with Washington would provide additional support in the fight against terrorism and other forms of insecurity. The next phase will therefore be about implementation. Can Nigeria translate this commitment into measurable improvements on the ground? Can displaced families safely return home? Can perpetrators of violence be successfully prosecuted? Can Christian communities and other vulnerable populations receive adequate protection? And can Nigeria convince Washington that its institutions are capable of dealing with the security and religious freedom challenges facing the country? Those answers will likely determine the direction of the CPC discussions in the months ahead. For now, Nigeria and the United States appear to be choosing cooperation. The latest talks demonstrate that the CPC designation has not closed the door between Abuja and Washington. Instead, it has created a framework for both countries to examine Nigeria's progress, identify remaining weaknesses, and work towards addressing them. The pressure is now on Nigeria to show that the commitments being discussed in Washington can translate into real improvements for communities across the country. What do you think about the latest Nigeria-US talks over Nigeria's CPC designation? Do you believe stronger US security cooperation can help Nigeria better protect Christian communities and other vulnerable citizens? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this report informative, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our latest political, security, and international reports. Thank you for watching. Many thanks. I am Tony.